Welcome to the Wild Remedies podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Ancora, and I'm here to bring you captivating stories from some of the most fascinating people I've connected with on my own journey of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Wild Remedies podcast. Really psyched about this one today. It's about menopause. And it's coming at this conversation is happening at a very timely time for me because it's something that has been coming up a lot in my life. I just have women in my family who are struggling with menopause and friends in my community that are going through the quote unquote change, and they're struggling. There's also a lot of information that I'm seeing out there in both the wellness community and the allopathic community, recommending all of these things, biohacking, do this, take these hormones, da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's important to start having conversations about another way. So today we are talking with Tania Elfersy, and her perspective is just such a relief. Like I felt so great after talking to her, and we are having a conversation about the innate wisdom of menopause and why it's been so pathologized over the past decade or so. Amazing tips in here for everyone at all stage of life. So even if you are a younger woman, even if you're a man and you want to understand this process that all the women in your life are going to go through at one point, lots of medicine in here for everyone. So a little bit about Tania. She is a transformative coach, a speaker, an award-winning author, and she specializes in midlife women's health. She spent years researching what causes and what can relieve symptoms associated with perimenopause and menopause. And she became free of her own physical and emotional symptoms naturally and simply through insight alone. Super powerful. She set up the Wiser Woman Project in 2015 to help women transform their experience of midlife change. And through her coaching, writing, and teaching, Tania focuses on connecting women to the innate brilliance of their bodies. And having seen the healing that occurs with ease when we relax into the divine intelligence within. So it sounds woo-woo, and if you're somebody who's in the middle of all of this and you're really struggling, understand, I get it. Even with my own health challenges and all the hormonal stuff that's going on with me right now, if you've been following the podcast and my journey, I'm also in this process of throwing everything away that I knew or thought I knew about health and wellness and hacking and Western medicine, and just relying on this innate wisdom that my body will heal with support of some like really amazing health practitioners and homeopathy, which I've been relying on lately. I'm seeing changes. It's a practice, and we're going to get a better look through this conversation on how this midlife phase invites us to do the work that I'm currently doing at that time, because it will get to a point where it's unavoidable. And this is the rite of passage of menopause. So without further ado, let's get into it and meet Tania.
Hi, I'm Maddie. Let me tell you a quick story of how I'm supporting my PCOS with Wild Remedies Spiced Chocolate Magic Latte. First of all, I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, so you know I'm investing in finding long-term, sustainable approaches to wellness. Living with PCOS, when things are feeling a little out of balance, it's common for me to wake up groggy, have blood sugar crashes throughout the day, or become totally overwhelmed by daily stressors. My morning coffee was causing blood sugar spikes, anxiety, and tummy trouble, so I swapped it for Wild Remedies Spiced Chocolate Magic Latte about a year ago, and believe me when I tell you that the change has been insane. Each sachet has 3 servings of wild Siberian chaga, a powerful antioxidant-rich adaptogenic mushroom that helps to fight inflammation and fatigue and regulate the immune system. It tastes like a creamy hot chocolate with just a hint of spice, and it keeps my stomach calm. Since swapping, I feel more clarity and calm throughout the day, and my morning magic latte helps to set clear intentions for the rest of my day. I save 15% on my monthly subscription at wildremediesshop.com, and at $2.50 per serving, it's saving me a ton on Starbucks runs and supplement orders. Check out the links and promos in the show notes to get your own. Your adrenals will thank you.
Welcome, Tania, to the Wild Remedies podcast. I have been really looking forward to chatting with you. I'm super excited about today's conversation. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to sharing.
Good. Yeah. I guess an email kind of popped into my inbox with a little bit of introduction to your work a few weeks ago. And I listened to one of the podcasts that was suggested. And I was like, yes, oh my gosh, I need this information for myself. Our community needs this information. This is so medicinal. And so for everybody who's listening right now, we're going to be talking about menopause today. And it's very timely for me right now because I have been getting a lot of messaging just within my own family system about, how menopause is just so horrible. My mom in particular has really, really been struggling with menopause for, 15 years now. But it's interesting because I see such a big difference between her experience and my auntie, who's her sister, her experience, which is vastly different. But I also look at my grandmothers. Both of my grandmothers ended up having hysterectomies in like their 50s, I believe. And so I think there is also a lot of like epigenetic trauma in our family around, femininity and female hormones and going through this change in our lives, which all women will go through. And so when I heard your work and the way that you describe menopause as being, not a disease, but just something that our bodies naturally do, I was so excited to hear your perspective on that because that's something that I believe as well. Like if this is just a natural process that our body is going through, like our bodies are really smart. And how could this just be something that is happening in a negative way where we need to shun it or medicate it or, all of these different things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really gets to the core of it, this idea that it's a natural part of our life cycle. So why would our body get it wrong? That's really the question I really like to ask doctors.
Yeah.
Who cannot provide an answer.
Of course they can't. Well, before we dive into all of that, why don't we just talk about your background and how you came into all of this amazing wisdom?
Yeah, well, I fell into perimenopause, which many of the listeners may already know. It's the time of change that builds up to menopause. It can take up to 10 years before we actually reach menopause. So at the age of 43, I started having symptoms. I had no idea what was going on. I just felt like I was falling apart. I hadn't heard of perimenopause like many women in their 40s. I just thought menopause, that wasn't for me. That happens average age of 51. For some reason, I thought it happened really quickly. It does not. And so it took me a few years to realize that I was actually starting the change. And that was 10 years ago. And I'm just now getting to menopause. So it really can take a long time. When I found out through a webinar with Dr. Christian Northrup that many women in their 40s have PMS on steroids, I was like, well, that sounds like me. PMS on steroids, that sounds like what I'm going through. And I was able to track that I was having 2 weeks of PMS every month, frequent migraines, skin problems, night sweats, all kinds of other symptoms. And realizing that there was this thing called perimenopause I hadn't been aware of, gave it a framework. And then I set off to explore, well, first of all, how didn't I know about that? Like, why was menopause, branded as this 50-something thing, when actually decades before, women understood that it was a change that went over a decade or so, or if not more, and it started in our 40s, but we pushed it to this sort of medical point of time. And then I started exploring, well, what could help me naturally? And I went on a path of trying to heal symptoms individually. So that's a lot of work when you think, oh, I got to do something for the migraines, I got to do something for the skin, I got to do something for the night sweats, I got to do something. And I was just running around and doing that for a while. And then I came across an understanding of our innate health, and through an insight around the nature of thought and sort of how we innocently create stress, I was able to heal all my symptoms within days. And when that happened, I was just like, well, when I had the insight, I thought, well, maybe I've healed my PMS, because I felt something on the emotional level, that something had shifted, like huge shift in consciousness. And then I noticed all my physical symptoms had gone away too. And that was back in 2015. And so since then, I've been sharing with women this sort of missing link, as it were, to what can create great health as we go through midlife change, and why we don't have to blame our hormones, and why our bodies know exactly what they're doing. But sometimes we come into midlife off balance. I was off balance emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and the body just wants to wake you up, and it wants to get you back onto a path of good health. And the reason why it wants to do that is because that's protective. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's not the narrative that we get told, which is downhill from now on, a crisis in our life, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's a brilliant part of our life cycle, and it's designed to wake us up to good health so that we carry on into old age and graduate to the position of elder, wiser, happier, more joyful, and able to share that knowledge with the younger generations.
That's so beautiful. And I think this information is so timely because, traditionally this might have been a period of time where women are starting to get these symptoms because of an unbalance. But these days it's happening in even younger generations, right? Like I've been suffering with health issues pretty much my whole life, and really getting to the crux of all of that now at the age of 38. And now, in a few years, I'm I'm going to be going into perimenopause, and I don't want to be in the position where all of this is happening all over again, because it's difficult. Hormonal, quote unquote, imbalances and changes can be very hard, but there's usually underlying reasons why, right? And so we live in a society now where we're inundated with a lot of different toxins. We are, especially women, have put ourselves in positions that are more masculine, where we've put these additional pressures on top of ourselves, not only just to, take care of children and the home and all of those things, which are already a ton of work. But now we need to make six figures, and we need to run businesses, and we need to do all of these things on top of it. And then our bodies start to break down, and we find it frustrating. I find it very frustrating. I'm one of those people. Also in my process, realizing underneath some of those emotional things, that there's other things that we can pick up along the way too that could disturb the whole system, which could be latent viruses and bacteria and parasites and things of that nature as well. And so I think everybody's kind of waking up to this right now. And for me personally, I feel like I'm at the point where there's a huge turning point in my health, and I'm looking forward to thriving in much better health. But then I kind of had this looming thing now where it's like, oh my God, okay, but now I'm going to have to deal with menopause. Like, And all of the messaging around that is doom and gloom and downhill. And in my family systems, I remember my great aunts being like, "Oh, getting old is so awful. It's just the worst," and all of this complaining about getting older. And I think it's really important that we change that paradigm, and excited to dig in more to your perspective on that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting that I heard you talk about is like the kind of the parallels between puberty and menopause. Like those are both hormonal changes in a person's life. One is normal, but the other is, a pathology for some reason. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, I want to share good news with you, and that
Mm.
if
Yeah.
women come to the period of midlife change and have done the work, like eternally, internally or on the physical level, if that's needed, then symptoms are completely optional. Like we don't have to suffer through
Mm.
midlife change. It's a sensitive time. But that doesn't mean that we have to suffer if we know where good health lies. And you're already like, well, on the well-trodden path for yourself. So it's that's good news. So like that story of, oh God, menopause is going to hit me and it's going to be terrible. Like that's actually made up. Doesn't have to be that way. And so this comparison to adolescence, and we can also compare it to pregnancy and postpartum. All of these times are times that are sensitive because of the hormonal change. But the hormonal change comes with a purpose, right? So in adolescence, it's to encourage us to move towards our sovereign being. Even though there's all these interruptions that society now creates that can interfere with that path to sovereignty. When we're pregnant, the hormonal change and the sensitivity serves a good purpose to protect the mother and the child, and also postpartum. So pregnancy, the comparison to pregnancy is a really good example, because when a woman is pregnant and if she starts experiencing symptoms, and she may go to a doctor, the doctor is not going to say to her, "Oh, that's your crazy hormones. We need to go in and fix your hormones. Your hormones have gone out of control." The doctor will say to her, "Well, how many hours are you working? And how are you resting? And how are you eating? And perhaps I can give you 2 weeks leave from work, etc., etc." This is much more of a compassionate approach to women that go through that time of intense hormonal change. But when it comes to midlife, and women are often burdened with family commitments, career commitments, their expectations, maybe they're carrying trauma from the earlier years of their life, and all of it comes to a head. And guess what? The body makes it come to the surface for a good reason, because it wants us to heal. It wants us to move forward in good health. But it's a sensitive time. So if we've got all of this going on and we're not coping well, and we're piling ourselves on with stress, and we're not eating well, and we're not moving, we're not getting sunlight, etc., the body is going to start talking really loudly to us, just as it does at other times of hormonal change, like adolescent, pregnancy, postpartum. And so we've got this narrative that runs through society that tells us, oh, that's your crazy hormones, right? And that feeds into this idea of, well, the woman's body is stupid. Well, why would that make any sense? Why would it make any sense that a woman gets to midlife and then her body turns stupid? It wouldn't. The only reason that you ever hear from doctors, celebrities, all kinds of media people these days telling you, oh, the reason why we suffer from menopause symptoms is because once we never lived through menopause. And that's also made up. I point out in my book and my blog times in history where menopausal women are mentioned, and they're not mentioned as freaks of nature. Women have always lived through menopause, but throughout the ages, child mortality was really high. And that brought the average age of life expectancy down. But it didn't mean that women reached 40 and dropped dead, just as men didn't reach 40 and drop dead. It meant that childhood was a struggle, but if you got through to adulthood, you had a very good chance of living way past menopause. So women have always lived beyond menopause, and it doesn't make any sense that our body wouldn't know what to do. But here we are, innocently creating these lifestyles that are very off nature's path. And so we get to midlife, and like I said, the body just wants to wake us up. And it has to compensate for all these times that we've fallen off nature's path. And so there's all this stuff going on, all these symptoms can come to the surface, and then we blame them on our hormones. And it's a complete misunderstanding of the way the body works.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can talk about some of those myths because that has definitely been part of my experience. Talking to my mom, for example, she's been desperately searching for answers for herself because, of course, she's not getting any help from the Western medical system. And so she's been working with naturopaths that are still trying to work on symptoms through things like supplements and HRT and all of these things. And through her own research, she's telling me, well, the exact same things that you just said. Well, women just never live past 40. And, our bodies just are meant to break down and all these things. And I'm like, that can't be true. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, even in societies where, we see communities of indigenous people, there are people that are elders, like well into their 90s, and they're living these long lives without interventions. And so, like, there has to be a way to
Yeah.
do it that
Yeah.
isn't just like patching up symptoms. Like, they didn't have HRT. So it's just crazy to me. Like, do you feel like that has to do with like maybe like patriarchy back in the systems prior, or like where did that all come from?
Yeah, well, there's been this idea about the woman's body being out of control, dangerous, hard to understand for millennia, right? And so it just got a modern packaging when they started to talk about hormones. And they had a different thing, once they used to think the womb, interfered with the brain, and that's why women were hysterical, hyster comes from the idea of womb moving around.
Yep.
So it's so we have all these concepts that have been dragged through history, and then along came the 20th century, and they started talking about hormones, and then they just repackaged it and talked about the crazy hormones instead. And so for someone like your mum, who's like absorbing these messages of we never used to live this long, etc. Imagine you wake up in the morning and that's what you tell your body, right? You've got no idea how to get through this. We're in new territory. We don't know. The hormones are going out of control. I need some kind of supplementation from an external source, be it a pill, a patch, a cream, whatever it is that they're selling. And I need that in order not only to calm my symptoms, but also this messaging is coming back into vogue, unfortunately, that women are being told you need those hormones in order to preserve your health, in order to preserve your heart health, in order to avoid stroke, in order to avoid dementia. And that's also nonsense. Right? Like I said, we live these very strange lives out of balance on so many levels. And then we think, oh, it just must be this, tiny chemical that's, running out of control and doesn't know what to do, and my body's stupid. It's not that at all. We've innocently created conditions that aren't in harmony with the way our bodies want to age. And then we blame, some made up story for it. But it's not true. So
Mhm.
I like to encourage women, as like one of the first steps to take is to create a different relationship with your body. Because once you can relax back into a trusting relationship with your body, into an understanding that your body doesn't betray you ever, actually, your body loves you, your body wants your good health, and your body will do everything to wake you up and to get you back into the path of good health. That is like the first sort of step towards transformation, as I've seen
Mhm.
with working with women.
Mhm. Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. And I can see where you probably get a lot of resistance from your clients.
Well, not my
Because
clients, but yeah,
sometimes those,
online, let's say.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, for example, I'm going to bring it back to my mom again. Sorry, mom, if you're
Go
listening to this,
ahead.
but I think it's a good example. Um, my mom is a nurse and she works shift work, which is one of the most detrimental things to human health. Like, you are constantly messing with your circadian rhythm. And she's like, my hot flashes are out of control and I can't sleep and all of these things. And I'm like, well, mom, you're working shift work. Like, this is just, and she doesn't need to be doing it. She's at retirement age, but she's doing it, because of a sense of purpose and because it's something that she's always done and it's a routine and all of these things. We can create all these constructs in our mind about why we feel so compelled to do things the way that we've done them for a really long time. And we don't tie our symptoms to our lifestyle, unfortunately. I know women who are complaining that they get hot flashes when they drink alcohol. And I'm like, okay, so that's like a very clear reaction to something that you're putting in your body. Maybe you might want to abstain from drinking alcohol. And they're just like, well, no, but it's like my favorite thing. And I need to have my glass of wine at the end of the day. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay, well, you can see the direct correlation, but like you actually have to make the lifestyle changes in order, like, because you're right, like your body gets to a point where it's just like enough, right? It's giving you very clear signals, but our minds sometimes can create these stories, or it's interesting too what you mentioned about like seeing more of these stories in the wellness industry now. I think with this culture of biohacking that we have, take this supplement for this and, stem cell injections for this and supplement with hormones in order for longevity and all of these things. We've just overanalyzed things to a point of detriment where we need to get to a point of just taking all of that away and getting back to a more natural state where we can just let the body get into homeostasis. But I get it. It can be really tough with the way that we've set up our society these days.
Yeah, yeah. I think, going back to the example of your mom, it's really useful to remember that our bodies can't send us a text message. The body can't send us an email, right? There is only a few ways that the body can communicate with us. One of them is through feelings, and the other one is through symptoms. And so, like, instead of us like interpreting when we feel bad or a symptom as a sense of malfunction, it's not that. It's a message from the body. And it's actually a gift, because if we didn't have that feedback system, then we could just go straight down into the life of disease, right? But our body's communicating with us all the time to try and get us back to the path of health. So with your mum, it's interesting because that sense of purpose and passion, that is really important. And studies of, for example, if you're familiar with the blue zones, areas in the world where people live longer and healthier than the regular Western, societies, then, passion and purpose are one of the main factors that they found that can contribute to long life. But if we are, doing something in our life, like working shift work or in an unhealthy relationship or not dealing with a trauma, and letting it just sizzle, under the surface all the time, then the body has to speak to us in some way. And it's going to do that through symptoms. And so when we search outside of ourselves for what can help us, we just fall back into a sort of natural way, a natural interpretation of the allopathic model, right? Which is a pill for every ill, right? So instead of a synthetic pill, then we say, oh, I need more of this herb, or I need to biohack in this way, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that is taking away a sense of trust in the body and a sense of appreciation of the innate intelligence in the body, which it exists. And when we look at places like blue zones, they do not biohack. They do not run to the doctor all the time. They do not run to the naturopath all the time, right? They just have healthy lifestyles built in, and they have time to relax, and they have community, and they have a sense of a greater spiritual existence, and all these things that we so often lack in our Western lives. And we're so busy searching for the pill, the cream, the patch, whatever it's going to be, to consume that natural or synthetic, because we think, oh, well, if I just find that, then I'll feel better. When actually we have everything we need within to start feeling better. And I've seen that not only in myself with my sort of spontaneous healing experience, but also with women who I work with, who all of a sudden, they have this sort of like shift in consciousness and their symptoms disappear. And so, like, one really interesting example for me is my eczema that I used to have when I was burdened with a whole range of symptoms. Eczema was one of them. And so I, in my home, had natural soaps, etc. But when I went out to a restaurant or I went to a friend's or family's house, there was the bathroom soap. And that would just be like acid on my hands. And after my insight and my healing experience, those soaps no longer, the soaps didn't change in the whole world, but my body was able to detox those, toxic materials inside the soap easily. And so I didn't have eczema anymore. They just didn't have the same effect. So how was that? That's you look at that and you're like, well, how does that make any sense? But it was just because I took the stress off my body by seeing something about how I was innocently creating stress. And then my body could just relax. And then confronted by a soap, it was able to detox it in the proper way. So, I still in my house, I have natural products, but it doesn't mean that I need to be so nervous about, oh my God, I've gone to a restaurant, what's in the soap, etc. Because my body just knows how to deal with, the sort of bumps of everyday life that we confront on a regular basis. So but we already have that ability to heal within.
Yeah. A really amazing anecdote that was given to me yesterday. I had a check-in with my amazing health practitioner. For anybody listening to the podcast, probably heard Dr. Kevin Preston on a couple of times, and I've been going through a healing process with him using homeopathy, which is something much different than I have done in the past. And so that required me, I've gotten rid of all of the pharmaceuticals, any hormone adjusting things that I've been on. I was on birth control for, 20 years at least, spironolactone for other symptoms, just patching up all of these things. Have gone off of all of that stuff within the past year and a half or so. And so there have been some big fluctuations and some symptoms that have been coming up for me. I'm really struggling with my skin and, changes in weight and all of these things. But I'm going through a process now where I'm learning to trust this innate wisdom in the body to heal. And working with this homeopathic method, I think it's been about 4 months now. I'm still not physically seeing changes or feeling that great because a lot of it is being unearthed. And so some of my symptoms are actually getting worse right now, but they are changing. And yesterday we did testing, and I got to see, a before and after in the systems in my body. And there's actually been a really big change, which is so encouraging. And so I'm really changing my mind. I've had to really work on my mindset around this trust in my body, which I've never had before, right? We always give that trust away to somebody else, to a healthcare practitioner. We don't have this self-responsibility or this understanding that our body is actually very, very wise, and it does want to come back to homeostasis. We just need to remove some things sometimes. And Kevin yesterday gave an example of a little seed when we see maybe like a dandelion kind of growing through the crack in the concrete. Like life is always trying to find a way, and we are part of nature, and there's no difference there. So we do want to come into balance. We just have to create the conditions to allow that to happen.
Yeah. And we are the variable in creation, right? Nature, left to its own doing, it knows exactly what to do. And then we come in innocently, absolutely innocently, because no one wants to suffer, no one wants to feel bad. But we come in, we have these thoughts and ideas about what life should look like, et cetera, and we create this imbalance. And if we can just, like you've said, relax into the intelligence within, the body knows. The body knows how to get us back. And I know that that's what homeopathy does. It just helps the body get back into balance without sort of saying, okay, we're going to deal with this symptom and deal with that chemical, and we're going to look at that, because the body is intelligent. So every symptom is an intelligent, occurrence. The body doesn't do it because it's stupid. The body does it because it's compensating for something that's out of balance. So, we look at symptoms and think we need to squash them, but just like in homeopathy, they know that you don't need to squash the symptom. Like, you don't need to take down the fever. You can let the rash occur, and then that's the body's intelligence expressing itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on HRT. And for anybody listening, HRT is hormone replacement therapy, which is something that has become very popular recently. In my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this is just another type of birth control. I was put on birth control when I was 14 because I started breaking out and my periods were heavy. And it was like, oh, here's a pill, which help those symptoms for sure. And so I stayed on it for a very long time. It's been very difficult for me to get off of it. And I'm wondering what you've kind of seen with your clients, because I'm like thinking, is this going to be the same sort of situation where people go on HRT and then they try to come off and then all the symptoms come back? Like what do you think is happening there?
And that's not what the doctors tell them when they go on it, because women for the last few decades have been encouraged just to go onto HRT for 7 to 10 years. It used to be that women went on it for lifetime, and then this research, the big boom in HRT started in the 1960s, and it was pushed onto women for a lifetime. They were told to go on estrogen therapy for life. And then they realized, oh, it's not so healthy. But they didn't do the studies before they pushed that out onto women. They did the studies decades later. So since like 2002 in particular, women have been told you should really go on it for 7 to 10 years. And when they come off it, they often get all their symptoms back, because what HRT does is it tricks the body. It tricks the body into a state of a 30-something, woman, but not a woman going through change. So then when you come off HRT, the body's like, okay, now we need to go through the change. But again, if you see menopause more as a rite of passage, a graduation to an elder, it's something that has to happen. Change has to happen. We're designed for it. And our body wants it. Humanity needs it. Humanity doesn't need women staying the same as they were in their 20s and 30s. It needs us to evolve to become these wiser elders and serve the community. So when women take HRT, they're desensitizing the body, tricking it into believing it's a different time of life. And then, like I said, when they come off it, the symptoms, if they haven't done the work, the symptoms can often come back. Now, I work with women who are on HRT or all kinds of different medications. I don't give advice on any medications. I'm not a medical professional. Women choose to come off it when they think the time is right. And if they have done the work, and HRT can sometimes be used to turn down the volume of symptoms to get a woman into a different place so that she can see something about her health that she hasn't seen before, right? Because if her nights are full of night sweats and her days are full of hot flushes and she's not getting any sleep and she's, feeling like really the symptoms are just driving her crazy, then if it's able to take down the volume a little bit, then maybe she can see something. And, in that sense, it could be useful, but it's as useful as, a migraine medication. It doesn't cure the migraine, but it can be useful to maybe, like, if you, instead of having a migraine the whole time, you could maybe see something about what's causing the migraine. And so when women feel more imbalanced, then they're able to see perhaps where their life isn't so imbalanced, and what they could perhaps do. So, but the way I see it in terms of hormone replacement therapy is from the time it was first approved by the FDA in 1942, it was really based on this idea that women's bodies need something that they don't have post-menopause, because we can't understand what a woman is if she's not in her reproductive capacity, right? So for decades, doctors would say, well, why do women live beyond menopause? What could possibly be the reason that women need to live beyond menopause? And anyone who, for example, has young kids and has a postmenopausal woman come through the door who doesn't have a kid attached to her, they know exactly the usefulness of a postmenopausal woman. But scientists had to look at orca whales, where there are also postmenopausal whales that lead the pod, and those pods do better because there isn't competition between the postmenopausal offspring and the grandchildren whales, as it were. But anyway, so this whole idea of the woman need the hormones is from this concept of, well, what is a woman if she's not reproducing? What, like, there must be something wrong. That's not the idea of woman. So there couldn't be this acceptance of an elder, wiser woman who's not in a reproductive stage. So and then there was this correlation that they made. Oh, look, when women get older, sometimes they get these kinds of disease. So it must be because they don't have the hormones. Well, you could switch it around and say, well, pre-adolescent girls, do they have those symptoms? Because postmenopausal women have a similar hormone level to a pre-adolescent girl. Well, of course, pre-adolescent girls don't have those symptoms and they just do fine. So this idea that the body doesn't know what we need at different stages in life created this market for hormone therapy. Again, it's based on the idea that the woman's body is stupid. So if you take that away, you're like, well, why do we need hormones? And yes, it can desensitize the body. Yes, it can deal with certain symptoms like hot flushes, vaginal dryness, etc. In some women, it's not an easy medication to take. I know lots of women who've gone on HRT, had to come off, tried a different one, had to come off, because it creates a lot of other symptoms as well. It can create a lot of other symptoms as well. If a woman needs it because she feels like she can't, get on day to day without it, that's her choice between her and her doctor. But you're going to have to do the work at midlife. You're going to have to see something about your health at midlife. Otherwise, the symptoms are going to keep on going. And there are women that, they have to come off HRT and they just can't deal with their symptoms afterwards. They don't know what to do. And, so a lot of women are now saying, well, it's just delaying the inevitable. I could have dealt with it when I was in my 40s, but I didn't. So it's a woman's choice, but we need to understand where it comes from, what it's founded on, and it's founded on a misunderstanding of a woman's body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of that also stems from a medical system that was just run by men.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't in women's bodies. They didn't understand them. There was a hatred towards them in a lot of ways, tons of misogyny over the past few centuries. And now we're in this, now we're in the spot figuring it out.
Yeah, and it's the same with the contraceptive pill, actually, because they didn't do long-term research. Nobody knew what could be the long-term effects of contraceptive pill. And now that, I'm seeing more and more about what's called early menopause happening, and people are like tying it to the contraceptive pill. So it's just, women aren't told the side effects. And even today, women run to hormone replacement therapy and they don't know all the side effects. It's not an issue of informed consent going on there. And often they haven't even done the research. And then even when there's research, they'll sort of cherry pick and they'll say, I'm not saying all women who are on HRT get, some kind of chronic condition or something like that. That's not true. But it does increase risks of certain things. So then they'll cherry pick and they'll say, for breast cancer, for example, for the combined HRT, it's just, 2 more in 1,000 or whatever it is. But there's an increase of 10 different conditions that you can get. So, it's hard to even comprehend what the risk can be when, the media is like, it's just not as bad as we thought for one specific thing. It's really a choice about the way that we want to live our life. And do we want to live our life tied to, corporate supply chains, which, by the way, in the UK, for example, there's been massive issues with supply of HRT. And so these women are going into cold turkey because they can't get their HRT. And so is that an empowering situation to be in? I don't think so. So isn't it amazing that we already have what we need to get through midlife change, and we already have what we need to heal our symptoms? I just, I prefer that route. and I encourage women to check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So what are some things that women can start doing? Like what are some of the things that you did to clear up some of your symptoms? And you mentioned there being like wisdom in some of the symptoms. Like what is the wisdom in a hot flash. I haven't experienced one yet, but I'm sure that when I do,
Okay.
I'm not going to feel like this is like fun and full of wisdom. Like what can women do that are experiencing some of these changes right now to get into balance?
Okay. So the issue with hot flushes and night sweats is if you ask a doctor, well, why does that happen? They'll say, oh, it's because of the estrogen. Say, but why? Why would a drop in estrogen create hot flashes? I think that at times of hormonal change, there's something that happens with the heat, right? You see it in teenagers. All of a sudden, a teenager gets to the age of 13, something like that, and they'll go, I don't want to wear my coat. And you're like, but it's cold outside. They're like, no, I'm hot. I don't want to wear my coat. And we don't say, oh, are you having a hot flash? No, it's just like a teenager being a teenager and they get hot, right? And if you have had, if anyone has experienced teenagers after sport, for example, well, there's something going on there in terms of sweating and etc. So teenagers get hot, pregnant women get hot, postpartum women, I remember like really having hot flashes when I was breastfeeding. I was just dripping with, breastfeeding my kids. So it's just, their heat happens in a different, it's expressed in a different way during times of hormonal change for whatever reason. And I think it might be to do with something about like it just puts the body on sort of a more alert. If we're in a sensitive time, the body's dealing with change. So if it needs to activate some kind of immune response, etc., it's closer to it when the body is just a little hotter somehow. That's my theory on it. I don't think that it's because it's experienced at all times of hormonal change. I don't think it's a bad thing. But that being said, it's not very pleasant if you have night sweats. It's not very pleasant if you have hot sweats or hot flushes all the time. So for different women, they find that different things can help them depending on where in their life they're out of balance. So, for example, you mentioned speaking to someone who said they have hot flushes after they drink wine. Many women have that. And I think it's more to do with like there are these trace substances in wine that get caught up in the winemaking process. Because some women have reported that organic wine doesn't do it to them, but it's like regular wine that does. And so the body sort of has is less interested in detoxing those substances. And so it has to sort of express itself in some way. And so it's an expression of something in our life that's out of balance. Now, I'll give an example for myself. I used to have night sweats. I had this insight that basically just allowed me to get back into balance mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I was able to drop the stress that I was innocently creating. I didn't have any symptoms. And then I went into a period of, my work was receiving some online bullying, and there was a particular occurrence, and I started taking that very seriously. And then I had a number of nights of night sweats. Now, because of my understanding, I had a different experience of the night sweats. I didn't need to think, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm having night sweats. I'm never going to be able to function tomorrow. I don't know how long the night sweats are going to go on. I just knew, oh, I'm taking my thinking seriously about this situation. I don't really know what to do, but I don't need to do anything. I know that I'll know what to do when I know what to do. And so I had these night sweats and I could relax into them. So yeah, maybe I had to get up, change my, clothes and go back to bed and hopefully, fall asleep again quicker. But it's just, there isn't something that we actually need to do. But women so often get uptight because they feel like it's like the sign of malfunction. And actually, again, it's the sign that something is out of balance. Now, if we're not prepared to take responsibility for what might be out of balance, then we're going to be searching for that herb, that synthetic, that whatever, to try and stop the night sweats. But even if we find that thing, whether it be sage tea or the HRT that is going to, help maybe with the night sweats or the hot flushes, the symptom will come out another way because the body wants to express itself and it wants to wake that woman up. So, for some women, they'll say, I cleaned up my diet and that really helped with symptoms. For some women, they'll say, I started walking and that really helped with my symptoms. And for some women, they'll say, I stopped, running marathons and I started walking and that really helped with my symptoms. And for some women, it's like, I changed my job, I slowed down, and that really helped with my symptoms. And for women who come to me, they've often done the diet thing, the movement thing, the being outdoors thing, and they're still experiencing symptoms because they innocently have a misunderstanding of our mental well-being. So it's something about understanding how the human mind works, etc. And that's the way that I help women. So, if a woman's like lying on the couch and eating potato chips all day, yeah, she probably should do something about that, right? And she might have fewer symptoms. So it'll be different for every woman, but it's really the basic pillars of health that we know are common sense. So if we're living high stress lives, we're eating crap, we're not moving, we're going to have more symptoms because the body just wants to talk to us. And there's wisdom in them, even though I know when I was experiencing all my symptoms, if someone said that to me, I'd be like, they think that's going to stop it. But once we take responsibility, we move into that trust, love, understanding of the body, there's less to do than we think, right? It's very simple and it doesn't have to be extreme. I've spoken to women who, did the raw diet, did the going to the gym 6 days a week, it doesn't have to be that. It's like, eat okay, move, on a regular basis, get sunlight when you can and deal with your stress. That's essentially brings the body back into balance. And then you're happily cooperating with the body in good health.
Yeah, and I think it's also a really potent invitation to start self-reflecting at some point, yes. Right? There's still a lot of people in society who haven't done the work. And this is a really important and potent time to do that. Because if some of these lifestyle changes that are required, for example, slowing down, changing jobs, all of those things. And this is even stuff that I'm currently looking at right now for myself. What are changes? I own 2 businesses. Have always been very busy. I have a lot of my self-worth wrapped up in my ability to succeed or to just present in a certain way. And I'm really having to challenge those ideas and deconstruct a lot of that so that I can live in a more easeful way and create more community and support around me. So it doesn't mean giving up on my dreams and my visions, but it means bringing in more people to support and releasing control of some things and really getting a better understanding on what I truly love doing and how can I be doing more of that and less of the things that create a lot of stress in my life. And, I've recently committed to a whole year without alcohol. And that was something that, I've taken breaks from drinking in the past. And it's not that I'm a heavy drinker, but when I do drink, it's, I have several and then I'm really not feeling well for, several days after that. And that's not conducive to healing. You're taxing your liver, you're doing all of these things. And so I'm doing all of these other really beautiful healing things, but then it's out of integrity to be consuming things that are setting me back. For other people listening out there, what are you consuming? Like, are you smoking? Are you smoking a lot of weed? Like are we numbing? Are we doing things in our lives that are numbing out the things that we actually need to be looking at to make those shifts? And so it's a really big invitation to self-development. And I'd love to hear your perspective more on menopause as being like a rite of passage to elderhood, because I think that's just so potent.
Yeah. So I see a lot of trends in terms of the women that I speak to. Women really For example, telling me, I'm just going to do this and I don't care what people think, right? It's that coming into sovereignty. I'm just going to follow what I love to do more. Again, coming into sovereignty. And it can be, it doesn't have to be what the media loves to portray in terms of the midlife crisis. That's like a total construct, right? But it's a misunderstanding of what comes to the surface at midlife. So if there's discomfort that we're sort of holding down, it's going to bubble to the surface. And we are being encouraged to heal, to go through that rite of passage, to become an elder, because then we'll be in a position to be an elder, a serving elder that we're supposed to be. And so it can be uncomfortable, right? It doesn't have to be. For example, you doing the work now, you may sail through it, right? Because you're going to already be in a position that you understand where your health, how your health is created. You're already like looking at, what do I love? You're already understanding that you don't have to operate from fear, right? This is another thing that bubbles to the surface. Like we live our life in the fear of where we should be living, what we should be doing, how we should be earning, et cetera, et cetera. And I encourage clients to understand the flavor of feeling that comes with fear or love and clarity, and to seek truth in what seems to us like love and clarity, and to really understand that the fear, where there's fear, where there's the shoulds, I should, if only, the regret, etc., all of that feeling comes with a certain flavor of constriction, fear, disappointment, frustration, etc. And there isn't truth there for us. So like, oh God, I have to stay in this job because if I don't X, Y, Z, the made up story, then, is there truth there? Or what about what other possibilities could be available for me? Or what if I follow my bliss? Or what if I just take that expectation of what I should be earning off the table? Or what if I take that disappointment about the relationships off the table? Right? And so there's a different flavor that comes with truth and that comes with the made up story of fear. And this is part of the graduation process, because with that, we understand where health lies. We understand how to create our mental, spiritual well being, which is innate to us, right? That's what we were born with. Everyone was born with it. So it's just really falling back into it. And like I said, it's so much simpler than we think, because we think that must involve a long journey and a lot of work and actually, your body already knows. We misunderstand the messages of the body. We misunderstand feelings. We misunderstand symptoms. But falling back into the intelligence of it all, we are carried through this graduation process much more. We are carried through this rite of passage. We evolve into an elder. Our consciousness evolves too. So, it's a natural process that's built into the design. If we're off nature's path, it's going to feel more uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be that way. And like I said, relax into the intelligence because it's got you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think there's also an aspect of realizing that there can be another layer of purpose to this change as well. I had this conversation yesterday as well around elderhood and becoming a good elder and what that means. And we don't have a lot of modeling of it in our society right now. It's kind of been lost because we're not living in these tribal ways that humans are actually built to live in. And you do see it in some societies where elders are revered and have a lot to contribute to the community. But unfortunately, in our society, it's become a thing where we really fear aging, and it's something that we shun and we hide away. And, people who age feel like a burden, right? Which is really difficult. So I can see people being really afraid of that process and wanting to avoid it at all costs. But I think we're at a pivotal time where we can start having conversations about that and how to change it, and to really value our elders and integrate them back into our systems, because there's so much medicine and potency that we need as younger generations, that can only be held through the older people, in our society.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, yeah, what a beautiful time to start exploring that, and how can you be of service, when that
yeah.
time comes.
You're so right about that lack of role models, and it's sort of the breakdown of the extended family, the breakdown of the tribe, if you like. That we don't have that sense of automatic purpose built in within the elder status. It's, in the West, we often ship elders off to nursing homes, separate them, keep them with the other people of their age, etc., rather than automatically having a role for them within the family. And it's not a surprise that where traditional societies have more respect for elders, women have fewer symptoms at menopause. Because of course, if you're coming into menopause and you're thinking, oh, that's where I'm going, that invisible, useless, whatever the story is that society makes up for us, no worthiness, etc., then of course there's more fear involved with the whole aging process. But in societies, even in Japan, where elders have more of a role to play, more respected, more integrated in society, well, women have fewer symptoms. So, people say, oh, it's because they eat tofu. It's not the tofu, because, it also happens in other societies where elders have more respect and are part of society, aren't shipped off at a certain age to a certain home.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, so much medicine and wisdom in this conversation. Thank you so much. It's definitely something that I needed to hear, and I think our community needs to hear, and a lot of work that needs to be established in this realm. But yeah, this is where we start.
Yeah, yeah, we've been under this bombardment of these messages about our crazy hormones for, it'll soon be a century. And so we need to get from, underneath that and emerge with a different understanding of our body as brilliant, women's bodies as divine, women's bodies with innate knowledge of how to go through change, with an understanding that we are designed for this change, and that this is what we're supposed to do to evolve into the wiser elder. And we don't need to desensitize that process. We don't need to dumb it down. We don't need to, squash it. We can let it blossom, and we can blossom at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just step into a new version of you. We're always evolving. It doesn't have to stop just because you get to a
Yeah,
certain age.
yeah, absolutely.
And we see this more with women. Men will typically like continue to work or do other things, and I know there are paradigms with men as well where they struggle with the aging process, but it's tougher for women for sure. And so I think these conversations and realizations are important, and it's inspiring. Like, it's definitely making me feel a lot more confident about stepping into that next phase of my life. So thank you so much.
Pleasure. The best is yet to come.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, for anyone that is feeling inspired by this conversation and perhaps wants to connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
Yes, through my website, thewiserwoman.com. And you can also look me up on Facebook or Twitter. I have a book that, was published a few months ago, and that's hopefully inspiring and short read. So yeah, there's a lot of free resources on my website, lots of blogs, etc., that can help open up, people to a new understanding of women's bodies, hormones, and midlife change.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Tania. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
For everybody listening, I hope you gained some wisdom today, and we will catch you all on the next episode. Thanks so much for sharing your time and energy with us today. We'd love to hear your feedback on how our podcast has impacted your life, and are also open to suggestions for new and interesting topics. Please leave your comments with a quick review to help us grow this magical community of wellness warriors and light workers. Every month, we select one lucky reviewer to win our big magic box, containing all 3 of our beautiful magic lattes. To connect with us further, check us out on Instagram at wild_remedies. Thank you again, and see you at the next episode.